We need new revolution. One of the French variety. Well, at least that's what Lady from the Outside proclaimed in a video she released on the 8th of May 2024. The Met Gala had just taken place 2 days before, featuring the usual ostentatious displays of wealth and elaborate outfits from anybody who's anybody, who can also afford the $75,000 per seat ticket price. And as with every Met Gala before it, this took place while many of those in the wider world were struggling, ranging from experiencing a decline in living standards to those living in active war zones such as in Ukraine, Gaza, the DRC, and Sudan. Haley Khalil, a model and social media personality, posted one particularly egregious video before the event.
Let them eat cake.
Who took the bomb?
This quote is attributed to Marie Antoinette, wife of French King Louis XVI, and was allegedly said by her upon being told that the peasants had no bread. The veracity of this quote is questionable, and many historians don't believe she said it. However, it's a phrase that's come to symbolize the elite's detachment from the struggles of the rest of the world. Lady from the Outside, among others, felt it was grotesque and that something must be done, so she devised a guillotine for the digital age. A digitine. Just as the French Revolution removed elites' heads from their shoulders, the digitine would remove elites from social media feeds, with a simple press of the block button. This would deprive them of ads and sponsorships, and was termed the new cancelled, and the latest form of cancel culture by the media. A similar premise, Blockout 2024, would emerge just a day before, although it's unclear if the digitine was prompted by Blockout 2024, or just a coincidence. There was a lot of overlap though, with their goals being largely the same, getting celebrities, influencers, the elite, to speak up about important issues or face the block button. Accounts like Kimberly Online and Blockout 2024 would post daily blocks of the day, which all its followers would, theoretically, block. A Blockout 2024 website was created that would update with the block of the day, along with a tracker of the follower change for previously blocked celebrities. But with over 3 months since the Met Gala and the first Digitine and Blockout 2024 videos, both campaigns have completely fizzled out and failed to generate any meaningful change, despite their noble intentions. So why has this happened, and what can Kony 2012 teach us about it? Let's get into it. The Digitine and Blockout 2024 exist in the context of a longish history of internet-based movements, which have taken place with varying degrees of success. The internet plays a significant role in all social movements now, with 5.44 billion people having internet access, roughly 66% of the world's population, and 5.07 billion of them having social media access. The size of its influence is debated, but social media played a significant role in the Arab Spring, a series of Arab uprisings and armed rebellions that began in the early 2010s, ultimately deposing rulers in Egypt, Tunisia, Libya, and Yemen. According to opening close regimes, what was the role of social media during the Arab Spring? First, social media played a central role in shaping political debates in the Arab Spring. Second, a spike in online revolutionary conversations often preceded major events on the ground. And third, social media helped spread democratic ideas across international borders. But social media alone did not cause political upheaval in North Africa. North Africa and the Middle East is not a monolith though. Social media had varying degrees of importance in the Arab Spring. According to the paper, The Role of Information Communication Technologies in the Arab Spring, states with some of the highest levels of internet usage, such as Bahrain with 88% of its population online, a level higher than that of the United States, and states with some of the lowest levels of internet exposure, like Yemen and Libya, both experienced mass protests. The scale of the short-term impact is undisputed, even if the long-term positive impact is. It was termed by Haitham Gouesmi in Al Jazeera as neither an absolute success nor an absolute failure. Social media's primary role, though, was in organising real-world protests. But while social media was used in the Arab Spring to turn online activity into protests in the streets, Kony 2012 was the opposite, an internet movement inspired by a 30-minute documentary about invisible children's real-world efforts to capture Joseph Kony. Joseph Kony is/was, I'll come to that later, the leader of the Lord's Resistance Army, the LRA, an extremist organisation that operated in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Central African Republic, South Sudan, and previously northern Uganda. The film prominently features Jacob Avae, a young Ugandan whose brother had been killed by the LRA. To simplify, Kony's crimes are a laundry list of the worst that humans can do, including murder, abduction, mutilation, sexual assaults, and perhaps most infamously, his use of child soldiers, the emphasis of the film, all of which made him one of the most wanted criminals on Earth and the first indicted by the International Criminal Court. Much of the film's focus is Invisible Children's campaign to raise awareness of Kony, who had been relatively unknown outside of the region prior to the film's release. The team made a film, not Kony 2012 itself, about Jacob and the invisible children that the Invisible Children charity is named after, and showed it to lawmakers and college campuses, as well as organising protests and fundraising. Their efforts did bear fruit, as 100 US soldiers were deployed to the region. However, this forced Kony to change his tactics, making capture more difficult, and this was the film's call to action.
But if the government doesn't believe the people care about arresting Kony, the mission will be cancelled.
If you are of internet using age in 2012, then you probably don't need me to tell you how big Kony 2012 was. But in case you're young enough to have never had a Facebook account, the film received 100 million views in its first 6 days and quickly became the #1 topic of conversation on Twitter. The film received extremely positive responses from numerous non-profits, charities and governments, such as the White House, UNICEF, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and the US Holocaust Museum. Many were thankful for it for raising awareness of an issue that had been known about for years. Anthony Lake, then executive director of UNICEF and previously President Clinton's national security advisor during the 1994 Rwandan genocide, even agreed that the same kind of film and awareness created would have made a difference during the genocide. But of course, the most notable effect of Kony 2012 was the online movement it spawned, which was mostly, a lot of Facebook groups and graphic design. Kony 2012 did place a big emphasis on posters though, a big part of what's remembered about it now, and had a campaign called Cover the Night, the idea of which being that local groups would do charity work in the morning and then put flyers up in the evening. Except this local action never really materialized. As Shanur Siavai recounted in his April 2012 article, Confessions of a Kony 2012 Action Kit Purchaser, published only 4 days after the Cover the Night event, watching Kony 2012 and even participating in the online conversation about its impact was easy. It made the world's problems appear solvable through a click. But when the same online activists were urged to serve their local communities, they didn't know where to go. In theory, people should have known where to volunteer. It was their own communities after all. But maybe there always needs to be some degree of central organisation, or at least local leaders. Many people did actually pressure politicians though, and the US Senate passed a resolution condemning Kony's atrocities, calling for increased US efforts to help protect civilians, urging President Obama to use funds that Congress had authorized for his LRA strategy, and calling on the president to keep Congress informed of progress in the mission. Except, it's questionable just how much the resolution did. It largely just called on then President Obama to do what he was already doing, in the form of deploying soldiers that were already there. And condemning his atrocities? Well, yeah, I'd fucking hope so. The deployment of 5,000 African Union troops to the region was often falsely attributed to the film, with Patrick Wagner noting, "The first reports of news media on the planned joint brigade of the 4 Central/East African countries date back to the 13th of October 2010. The BBC and AFP reported about the plans. The idea is a lot older than the Kony 2012 video." Of course, plenty of donations did go to invisible children, which is, of course, generally a good thing, although there were questions around the use of their funds. The film was also criticised for oversimplifying the politics of the region, which is inevitable when a film's only 30 minutes long, but something Jason Russell, its co-creator, has justified as necessary. There's also arguably a disproportionate emphasis on Jason Russell and his son, which seems to make up about half the film, and there are also concerns about the film's impact on Uganda's fragile tourist sector, despite the LRA no longer being there. Overall, watching it in 2024, the documentary feels a bit naive. Ultimately, and tragically, the scale and intensity of the reaction to Kony 2012 would culminate in Jason Russell having a very public psychotic episode. Kony 2012 sobered people to the realities of internet-based movements, and is, overall, remembered by many as a bit of a mess. And worst of all, 12 years later, Kony still hasn't been captured. But that being said, while the film was criticised in many ways, it was very effective. Sure, there was a disproportionate lack of results, but it did capture awareness on a scale rarely seen. At the time, it was the most viral video ever, no small feat for a 30-minute video. And while it was flawed, its aims and methods did make sense at the time, namely pressuring politicians and political organisations, and, most relevant to this video, celebrities. It's easy to forget that the concept of influencers didn't really exist then, and it was more so that you had celebrities from TV, movies and music, and a relatively small number who had become famous from the internet. Widespread use of Twitter by celebrities offered a direct channel to fans, and the influence of celebrities and the use of it was becoming apparent, especially as it was also a place they'd share their most intimate thoughts, including some ones that they probably shouldn't have posted. This influence was something Invisible Children recognised, and used Kony 2012 to demand that celebrities use their platform and raise awareness. There's that word again. We felt if people in the Western world knew about this atrocity, it'd stop in days, Jason Russell said in a recent interview. Many look back on the era of Kony 2012 as being naive, and the perception of celebrities at the time forms a big part of this. This wasn't the early days of the internet, and people didn't unquestioningly adore all celebrities, but Jennifer Lawrence liking pizza was considered very interesting and cool. It's the kind of celebrity worship that millennials are stigmatized for. Even as late as 2014, the Oscars selfie was breaking the internet, before Kim Kardashian would officially break the internet later that year, and 10 years after that, she'd be sent to the digitine. As Reddit user Gamer American commented, in 2014, a picture with a bunch of celebrities was the most insane thing people had ever seen. This photo is tainted by the numerous allegations Kevin Spacey would go on to face, before going off the rails and doing whatever this is.
And Merry Christmas to you too.
Ellen DeGeneres would also be outed as an abusive boss and a nightmare to work with, ultimately winding down her talk show, at least in part due to these allegations. But back then, she was the fun talk show host, who brought out people who'd been in a funny online video one time, and surprised celebrities with people in boxes. So when celebrities like Ellen did share Kony 2012, it was epic. Were people still saying epic back then? Celebrities weren't necessarily considered selfish for not doing anything, but could get easy praise and recognition by sharing the video, one that many of their followers would have already seen. There was nothing to lose and everything to gain. The contrast between 2012's perception of celebrities and that of the present day couldn't be much sharper. Of course, there are still celebrities that are generally perceived favourably, such as Keanu Reeves, Dolly Parton, Robin Williams, Will Smith, Julia Roberts, Jeff Goldblum. However, these unproblematic faves are so few and far between that they're generally commonly agreed on. Most celebrities have done something problematic. The severity of these transgressions ranges significantly, from Ariana Grande licking a donut to, say, R. Kelly. This isn't me complaining about cancel culture, if there is such a thing, it's just that bad news about celebrities tend to be more interesting than good news. This also has the bonus of helping us feel good about ourselves. In a stressful context such as the present day, celebrities can be a valuable outlet for our anger. And with celebrities posting more online, there's more to criticize, even if they're not as brazen as the days of Twitter. There's also a larger pool of elites to criticize, as there's now the nebulous profession of influencer, whose entire job is posting online with fewer barriers to entry than in the days of Kony 2012. This resentment is perfectly encapsulated in the sentiment of the digitine and Blockout 2024. The tone of the Blockout 2024 videos is often gleeful, as they declare who is to be blocked, understandably motivated by resentment towards people who enjoy the trappings of wealth and fame without speaking up on important issues. To be clear, I'm not pointing this out to undermine the creators. Getting one up on wealthy, famous influencers probably does feel good, intoxicating even, and this is probably part of why the campaign started so strong. According to blockout2024.org, celebrities such as Kim Kardashian already lost more than 3 million followers overnight, a week after the campaign's launch. I'm not sure if it's poor wording, but that sort of implies Kim lost 3 million followers, when she in fact only lost 100,000 on TikTok, and while she did lose close to 1 million on Instagram the month after, this was following an existing trend. As of the time this evening's Standard article was written a week after it had started, the website cited Beyoncé as having lost 186,000 followers, Billie Eilish as having lost 137,000, and Selena Gomez as having lost 164,000, despite Gomez having also signed the ceasefire petition. But as of the time of making this video a few months after, many of these celebrities/influencers have gained or almost totally recovered their losses, such as Taylor Swift, who initially lost 300,000 of her 32.8 million TikTok followers and 50,000 of her 283 million Instagram followers. The Blockout 2024 website now shows some celebrities as having gained since the Blockout, including Hailey Bieber, who has been its block of the day for weeks. And Hailey Khalil, the initial target of the digitine, has once again crossed the 10 million followers threshold. Celebrities are speaking out a bit more, maybe. It's hard to assess though, and they're still certainly engaging in ostentatious displays of wealth. Looking at the Blockout 2024 TikTok's block of the day videos, these gradually declined in views until the last one posted on June 2nd. Kimberly Online barely made it a week, posting her last video related to blocking on May 15th, and Lady from the Outside hasn't posted since her first video. There's basically been no videos made about the digitine or Blockout since May, with both movements having fizzled out as quickly as they got going. Ultimately, it wasn't enough to galvanize people, or the right people, for what should have been very simple and effective. It made sense after all. Mass blocking celebrities would have reduced their revenue. In an article on the topic, published shortly after digitine and the Blockout had gotten going, Amy Kaufman, Chief Marketing Officer of the CMO Room, a network of senior-level marketers, noted that a substantial drop in influencers' follower counts and engagement rates directly impact their ad revenue and the effectiveness of their brand partnerships. Even at its peak though, the scale of impact wasn't large enough, and it lacked the momentum to keep going. So, why did it fail? Part of the problem, and one evident from the comments, is that many of the participants had already blocked the targets or weren't fans of them. While it makes sense to target the biggest celebrities first, even the biggest ones aren't followed by most people. It also failed because of a lack of broader consensus on the same issue as Kony. Nobody would passionately defend a child-abusing warlord, but many excuse the war crimes being committed in Gaza. While many people creating their own block lists democratized the process, it created confusion and a fragmented approach, and there was a lack of a strong leadership to keep the campaign growing and visible. This meant that the campaigns didn't stay in the news after the initial flurry of articles. This was also partly because of the nature of the movement. While it might feel empowering blocking a celebrity or influencer in the moment, the action doesn't produce anything tangible. It's just the absence of something, content that may have not been seen anyway. So this begs the question, is it even effective to target celebrities and influencers? While Kony and the digitine/Blockout may have framed celebrities differently, they both emphasize celebrities as a solution to the world's ills. If only celebrities spoke out more, we could fix those ills. Brittany Broski is a good case study in why this may not be the case. She's not a celebrity, internet comedian might be more accurate, and has 7.5 million followers on TikTok, 435,000 on Instagram, and 2.37 million on YouTube. She has a successful podcast, The Broski Report, and posts weekly on YouTube, consistently getting at least 1 million views on her videos. She regularly posts on Instagram, but interestingly, she hasn't posted on TikTok in 3 months. And the last one is a hint as to why. In the months leading up to it, Brittany had been heavily criticised for her silence on Gaza, and remained inactive on TikTok during this period. What she posted wasn't an apology video, although I'm not sure people were even looking for one, but she does say,
"And I can't change how little I've spoken about a cause in the past. All I can do is change how much I'm going to talk about it in the future."
She spends most of the video directing people to resources to support the Palestinian people, as well as encouraging people to vote, which are generally good things. Brittany Broski probably does sincerely care. The problem is that the video comes across like she made it because she was forced to, and well, she kind of was, and this was only made worse by her delay in doing it. The comments reflect this sentiment too, with most of them being sarcasm or dismissiveness, which isn't entirely unreasonable, especially as directing people to resources feels redundant months later. Even if it had been done sooner, you get the feeling that it wouldn't have been much better. If celebrities or influencers are speaking out because they have to, you can kind of just tell. They'll often only speak out when it's the least unfavourable option, as speaking out almost always risks alienating a section of the audience and any sponsors too. As Jasmine Enberg, an analyst at market research company eMarketer, points out, many brands are still skittish about aligning with creators who comment on politics or engage in political activism, for fear of being caught up in inflammatory rhetoric or charged conversations online. Pressured speech, even if it's kind of sincere, often doesn't count for much. It has to be proactive, not reactive. We want celebrities to speak up, and then they do, maybe share resources, then what? It doesn't really have much impact because it's not sincere. They're going through the motions, meeting a minimum threshold to avoid the digitine, a minimum threshold the digitinists aren't clear on. Is sharing a petition enough? How many links? How many videos? Kony 2012 showed we overestimated the influence of celebrities, especially when they're targeted with a lack of clear direction, and that's a mistake we're continuing to make even today. But when we're disillusioned with the political class after decades of failure, who else's feet are we to hold to the fire other than the ones in designer shoes? But what do you think about this kind of celebrity-focused activism? Is it an effective way to drive change, or is it just slacktivism, targeting the lowest hanging fruit? Maybe I've spoken too soon and the digitine will come back with a vengeance. Let me know in the comments and hit those like and subscribe buttons. I release a new video every couple of weeks. Thanks for watching, see you next time.